This is probably the rawest and most honest thing I've ever put out into the world. Um, Usually when I write or make a video, I want it to look just right. I think about the backdrop and how I'm dressed. And I'll tell you, I haven't even brushed my hair. I'm just wearing one of my heavy metal t-shirts, and I'm sitting in the corner of my bedroom in one of my favorite chairs. No particular backdrop, nothing special. And I don't know, I need to say this. There are a lot of people who know me, but I don't know that you know what is the most important thing to me. I was thinking about something that Paul wrote in Philippians 3 after he'd gone through and basically given his CV, list of all of his accomplishments and things that, things that he had done, things that made him great in the eyes of the world, at least in the eyes of his community. And many of you know me because of those things. You know me because of teaching awards and publications. You know me as the big personality, the funny guy, the deep guy, the intellectual guy. Some of you know me as the rock and roll guy. Some of you enjoy the fact that there's a scholarly man who enjoys 80s heavy metal, and that's fun and all of that. But then Paul's very blunt. He goes on to say in Philippians 3, verse 8, everything else is worthless when compared with the infinite value of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord. Actually, let's back that up to verse 7. He says, I once thought these things were valuable, but now I consider them worthless because of what Christ has done. Yes, everything else is worthless when compared with the infinite value of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord. Friends, those of you who know me, there is nothing that I have done, nothing that is truly worth anything compared with what Jesus Christ has done. His life, his death, his resurrection, his offer of life eternal, true life through his grace, nothing that I've done compares with that. And none of the awards, none of the accolades. And I appreciate the notes and things that I've received from so many people, especially students over the years. None of that, though, matters compared with the surpassing greatness of knowing Jesus Christ. Nothing. And I was put in mind of this, and the reason I wanted to do this is because of something that Mark Middleberg and Lee Strobel announced yesterday. Some of you know Lee Strobel from the book and the movie The Case for Christ, and many other books as well. The Case for Creator, The Case for Miracles, and so forth. Many of you know Mark Middleberg, leading Christian apologist. Some of you know him from his works, Finding a Confident Faith, the one that introduced me really to his work, Becoming a Contagious Christian, Becoming a Contagious Church. And these two guys have teamed up to start the Strobel Center for Evangelism and Apologetics at Colorado Christian University. And they came out yesterday with a video announcing that they were now accepting applications, undergraduate and graduate applications, for their program in applied apologetics. And I'm going to have a link to that so you can see that video and a link to see how to do that. But when I watched that video yesterday, I was texting with Mark, and I said, this is just the greatest thing that I've heard all year. There is nothing more important than Christians who know how to defend the faith and know how to share the faith. And I'm not talking about their own faith, that is part of it in terms of what they believe, but also the faith, the Christian faith, what it is that God has revealed through Jesus Christ. We need to know how to share that with others and how to defend that. And of course, one of the classic passages for that, again, comes from Paul in Romans chapter 10. Starting in verse 11, he says, "For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. But how can they call on him to save them unless they believe in him?" That makes sense. "And how can they believe in him if they've never heard about him?" Well, that also makes sense. "And how can they hear about him unless someone tells them?" Unless someone tells them. One of my favorite verses, and some people sometimes talk about a life verse, but I guess if I had to choose a life verse, it would be Isaiah 50, verse 4. And pardon me, I know it in the Latin, so I'm going to say it in the Latin and I'll give you the English here. But Isaiah 50, verse 4 says, "Dominus dedit mihi linguam eruditam, ut sciam sustentare eam qui lasus est verbo." The Lord has given me an educated tongue, so that I may know how to sustain with a word the one who has grown weary. And I've taken that very much in terms of my career as a teacher. I've got an educated tongue. The Lord has blessed me with great education, kindergarten through graduate school. Great teachers all along the way. And so I'm grateful for that. And I'm therefore able to, with my tongue, through teaching, to sustain, sustentare, literally to hold up people and my students with a word. And I've often interpreted, I usually interpret that as encouragement, knowing how to support someone through encouragement. But if we stop and think about the fact that Jesus is the Word, the Logos in Greek, I think about the beginning of John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Jesus is the Word. Now, putting that back over against Isaiah 50, verse 4, "The Lord has given me an educated tongue so that I may know how to sustain with a word the one who has grown weary." Wow, that takes on a whole new meaning. An educated tongue so that I may know how to sustain with a word. Folks, we need people who are trained and educated in how to sustain and support others with the Word, who is Jesus Christ. That's why the program that Mark and Lee have established at Colorado Christian University is so important. It's vital. There is nothing more important that we're doing today. Nothing. There's nothing we're doing through our governments. There's nothing we're doing through any educational program. Nothing that compares with sharing and teaching the truth about Jesus Christ and knowing how to defend that. People have questions. People have legitimate arguments and pushback. And they should. Anytime we tell them about something, anytime you tell somebody about something, there's a natural pushback. Well, what about this? Well, what about that? We need people who are trained to know how to answer those questions and then who can go out and train others. So I encourage you to check out Mark Middleberg and Lee Strobel at the Strobel Center for Evangelism and Apologetics at Colorado Christian University. And I've got to end this with a poem that a friend wrote for me when I was in graduate school. Golly, this is 25 years or more ago now. But he wrote this poem. "I stand here, a barefoot preacher, before the Roman architecture of your mind, dressed in my drab and ragged homespun. How I amuse myself with these pretensions of simplicity. And let me just say that I am awed by the solemn mass of this Senecan foundation. the careful grandeur of these Ciceronian columns, and the soaring exactitude of this Virgilian dome, a pantheon to house the images of philosophers and poets, men who have walked among us as gods. But in this shadow I do stand, and I do dare to speak words without meaning, logos without logos. On these very steps I stand, and in blasphemy declare my kerygma, that I know how to breathe a sight, and I know how to hear a color, and there are deep places in the earth of which these stones have never even dreamed. Friends, that's actually an embarrassing poem for me. Senecan Foundation, the philosophy of the Stoic philosopher Seneca. I love it. I love philosophy. I love ancient philosophy. I love particularly the writings of Seneca. Ciceronian columns. I love the oratory, the pyrotechnic wordplay of Cicero, and the Virgilian dome, the beauty, the mastery of the poetry of Virgil and others as well. I love all that. But that is not what is important. None of it. None of it is as important as the kerygma, the announcement that God came in the flesh because he loved each and every one of us so much, that he chose to take on the punishment that was our due, took it on himself. He died and he rose again. He lives today. And he offers the gift of life and hope and grace and joy and salvation to anyone who believes. That's what's important. And that's why I'm making this video today without any particular fanfare or setup. It's just raw and honest. So check out what's going on with Lee Strobel and Mark Middleberg. And God bless.